This is the Adoption is Love podcast. Real people sharing real adoption stories and the real power of choosing love.
I knew my grandfather was a Baptist preacher and that my birth mom had gotten pregnant outside of marriage and had decided on adoption, but that was really about all I knew.
Stephanie was adopted, and years later, she chose adoption too. In this episode, she shares why open adoption matters so much to her and what she's learned along the way. Catherine Cheek from Deaconess Pregnancy and Adoption joins the conversation.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about your adoption growing up?
So I was adopted at birth. I grew up in Mississippi. I was adopted out of an adoption agency in New Orleans, Louisiana. Always knew that I was adopted. I don't remember a time that my parents ever came to me and said, "You're adopted." It was just something that I always was aware of, was proud of. It was a positive thing in our household. It wasn't something that was negative by any means. Grew up with a little bit of information about my biological family, not a ton. I knew that my biological grandfather was a Baptist preacher. I knew that my biological mother was a middle child. I think that was important for the agency to tell my parents because my adoptive mom was also a middle child. And so that was one way that she felt bonded to my biological mother. So just knew some generic information. My parents always told me that when I turned 18, if I wanted to know more information at that time, they would help me find out anything I wanted to know about my biological family.
The conversations that you had about your birth family, were they a sit-down conversation or what did that look like?
It wasn't much of a sit-down conversation. I don't actually remember having real conversations. I know every once in a while we would make comments about, I wonder if I have any siblings, or just knowing that I was born in New Orleans. I felt connected to New Orleans and really wanted to go visit that area, but not just a whole lot of sit-down conversations about adoption.
What was it like growing up adopted? Did you feel different than your peers?
I didn't have to explain to everyone that I was adopted because I did look like my adoptive parents. So it wasn't like I walked into a room and people immediately knew that I was adopted. It wasn't a secret, but it also wasn't something I had to explain all the time. I did grow up in a small town, and there was one other girl in my class who was adopted. We just bonded over that. We weren't ever real close as far as similarities and activities, but just having that bond of someone else who was adopted was always nice to have growing up.
Were there times that you felt like the adoption came more apparent at times in your life than others?
I don't think so. For me, there was always the wonder of, who do I look like? Where do I get this personality from? Just more questions about that. I never really felt comfortable asking my parents for information about my biological family, even though I had been told at the age of 18, we'll tell you whatever you want. Just not having that openness before that made me a little hesitant to just ask questions once I did turn 18. And I had a good life. My parents were great. My childhood was great. I didn't have a real reason other than just the curiosity of wanting to know.
Did your adoptive family talk about your birth family to you, maybe a little bit about them?
It was very little, just the fact that I knew my grandfather was a Baptist preacher and that my birth mom had gotten pregnant outside of marriage and had decided on adoption. But that was really about all I knew. And I think that was really probably about all they knew.
Did it feel like it was in a positive light? Or was
Definitely.
Were there any challenges or misconceptions that you felt because you were adopted?
No, I didn't feel anything growing up negative at all about it, really.
Have you been able to ever meet your birth family?
I have met some of my birth family. Once my husband and I decided to start a family, we ended up on the adoption journey ourselves and came to Deaconess and heard about open adoption, which was kind of crazy to us when we first heard about it because that was just not something I was familiar with, especially as being an adoptee. But hearing the stories of the birth mothers and adoptive families, we felt like, yes, we definitely wanted to have an open adoption with our child's birth family. And so once our daughter was born, we immediately started that relationship with her birth mother and just kept it going and really saw the importance in that and have never changed our minds on the open adoption part. But when she was about a year old, I started feeling guilty that one day she's going to ask me why I haven't met my birth mother and why I felt like it was so important for her to know her birth mom. And I'm going to have to give her an answer. And so at that point, I decided to do a search for my birth mom. I came back to Deaconess and gave them the little bit of information that I had, and they did the search or started the search for me. They didn't give me much hope when I left that they would find anything just because it was such small amount of information. And I was really okay with that. I was like, well, I can say that I searched and that we weren't able to find her, and I can feel good about that. And I left the office and about an hour later got a phone call saying that they thought that they'd found my birth mom. And so they sent me all this information about her, and she was like, I'm going to continue searching, but I feel good that this might be her. And I remember just looking at it like, wow, like I do have a birth mom. There is a possibility of me meeting her, and just those emotions of never really thinking that I needed to or wanted to suddenly, oh, I might actually get to meet her. And I had those emotions for about 20 minutes before I got a phone call saying that they had found my birth mom's obituary. It quickly went from, I don't need to meet my birth mom, to I have a birth mom that I can meet, to I'm never going to get to meet her. That roller coaster was a little emotional, but from that, I did get the opportunity to meet my biological aunt, my biological grandparents, and I also have a younger sister that I've been able to meet and form a relationship with. My aunt was the first one that I talked to on the phone, and she was so open and just excited to hear from me and know that I was okay, and the same thing with my grandparents. It's been good. It wasn't exactly the relationship that I thought it was going to be, but it's been a good one.
That's great to hear. Sorry for your loss of your biological mother.
Thank you.
Were you able to share with your immediate family as you were walking through that process?
I didn't immediately. I think it was just that I didn't want my adoptive parents to feel like they had done anything wrong. And I just had a little bit of guilt with that. And I needed to figure it out on my own. When I did first find out about it, I remember I came back to Deaconess and just had a counseling session and was like, I don't know. And I was upset with my adoptive mom for no fault of her own. It was feelings that I put on her that I felt like, oh, she might be a little relieved that my biological mom isn't going to be a competition or anything like that. It wasn't fair for me to put that on her. It was totally me putting that on her. But I remember Deaconess Debbie telling me that it's okay to have those feelings. You don't have to tell anyone. This is your story and this is yours to process. I did eventually tell my adoptive mom, and she was so supportive and so sweet. And she was excited that I had grandparents, immediately sent me tons of pictures from my childhood that I could share with them and give them, and just stories. And she has been super supportive the whole time and always asking about them and checking on them and making sure they're okay.
I'm glad you were able to find some of your other birth family.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your biological mom's decision to place you for adoption?
Obviously, I've never got to talk to her about that decision. I did receive a letter that was given to me that she had written to my grandparents while I was pregnant. It was a difficult letter to read. I tucked it away for a while before I actually made it all the way through. The letter made it seem like she just had a lot of guilt towards becoming pregnant without being married. It was very apologetic to her parents. It was hard to read. I'm glad she chose adoption. I'm not sure how that came about for her. That makes me a little sad, but I'm glad she made the choice that she did.
If you could speak directly to your birth mom, what would you want her to know?
I would want her to know that I had a good childhood. I had a good life, that she made a good choice, and maybe the circumstances surrounding it weren't ideal, and I don't know what all of that was, but I did have a really good life. And I had opportunities and parents who supported me and who still support me. I would just say thank you, honestly. Say thank you. I would also tell her sorry that I didn't look for her earlier so that she could have seen for herself that I was okay and that I had a good life.
So in closing, is there anything else you would want to share about your adoption journey?
I would just say that, again, it's been a journey. I grew up knowing that I was adopted, being proud that I was adopted, not being ashamed of it, but also a little bit of hesitation on, is it okay for me to ask these questions? Is it okay? Am I going to hurt my parents' feelings if I ask them questions? To learning that I did have a birth family. And it's just different. Like, you know, you have a birth family, but then once you actually meet them and put a face with it, and then just that acceptance from my adoptive parents that it was okay, and just the whole journey. It's not a one-time thing. Adoption doesn't end when the adoption is finalized. It's a lifetime of a journey, and it's beautiful and hard and all of the things.
Thank you for sharing that part of your story.
Thanks for listening to the Adoption is Love podcast, brought to you by Deaconess Pregnancy and Adoption. If you're curious about open adoption or just need someone to talk to, an adoption specialist is available at adoptionis.love.